Learning Talmud this morning. We're studying the Talmud. We're learning from this book. It's an art scroll book. It's called the Ein Yaakov, Volume 1 of the Ein Yaakov, which is the legends of the Talmud all collected together. We're on page 284, and we're continuing in our journey about that special day when there was a coup in the yeshiva in Babylon, when the Rabbi Yehoshua was removed. No, not Rabbi Yehoshua.
Rabbi Gamliel.
Rabbi Gamliel was removed from his post. Thank you very much. And Rabbi Yeshua was potentially in line to be appointed in his place, but they decided that it would not look good to appoint Rabbi Yeshua because he was the cause of the coup. So they decided on the very young Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and a lot of things changed that day. The Talmud continues to tell us what else changed in that day, middle of 284. The Gemara continues relating what happened. A Brisa taught, Masechta Eidiyos was taught on that day. You know what that means? You know what a Masechta is?
No.
A Masechta is a tractate of Talmud.
No.
The entire tractate of Eidiyos was taught on that day. Let's look at note 10. Unlike every other tractate in the Talmud, which deals with one topic or several related topics, the tractate of Eidiyos, which means testimony, is a collection of rulings that range the length and breadth of the entire 6 sections of the oral Torah. This is because all those rulings resulted from discussions that took place in the Sifta on that eventful day. In other words, remember we said they added like 300 benches of students that day. The discussion was insane, the amount of conversation that was taking place that day. And that's why, I was talking to my son last night, and he's flying back from yeshiva. So he tells me he's overweight luggage. I'm like, overweight luggage? Why do you have overweight luggage? Two of them. So he says, because he's bringing home books. So I was like, okay, you bring home books. It makes sense. So he's explaining to me that by the time he gets married, he thinks he's going to have a library, which is going to be so significant that when he moves out into his own house, we're going to have like another room available in the house. So I said, yeah, that's quite likely. It's quite possible. And then we were having a discussion. He brought it up. He was like, I don't know if non-Jews have such a relationship with books. Like how many books, we were just having this chat last night, with my teenage son. How many books does your average non-Jew have in his house versus your average observant Jew? I mean, this kid is 14, 15 years old, and he's schlepping home books, He said, I think he's got 30 books he's bringing home. So I thought that was very interesting. It's a very interesting observation that he made. You walk into people's houses today. You go to see a house that's being shown, and you go to the family room. The main object in the family room is obviously the television. Obviously, right? Then they have certain trinkets, like vases from the Ming dynasty and things. And then you have like 4 books. Just like
decorated, right?
Yeah, they're decorated.
Right?
Never actually been opened.
When they show a house, a real estate broker wants it to be minimalized, so they don't want a room.
Listen, I walk into houses which aren't minimalized and aren't being shown, and it's all you see. But then you walk into like a house like mine or yours, and you'll just see books like flowing out of everywhere. There was once a kid who knocked in my house on Halloween.
I think it's got a lot to do with the type of book too. You're not going to go into a non-Jewish house usually and see a lot of religious books. You're not. You're going to see a lot of.
Who said religious books? I said books. I just said books.
My point is that you're going to see this novels.
But there's another big difference. Another interesting difference is that when you go into a non-Jewish house, the relationship of a non-Jew to a book. And correct me if you think I'm wrong. But I think I'm right about this point. When a non-Jew reads a book, what happens when he finishes the book? Done. Drop it off at the local public library, park, or something, and somebody else should buy it or take it, right? Only the Jewish people dance with their books, okay? Show me another nation that has a book and dances with the book. Who does this?
You don't think that has to do with the subject matter?
Of course it does. Of course it does.
You don't care. You throw the book away.
Of course it does, because our books are holy. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying books in general, the relationship of us with books. But even religious non-Jews, do they dance with their books? I've never heard of a Christian or a Muslim dancing with his Quran or something. I never heard of such a thing. No. We've got a whole yontif dancing with books, right? So I think that there was a kid knocked on my door once on Halloween. He must have been a Jewish kid because we opened the door and he sees the library. Yikes. So many sitters. This kid says,
the word sitter.
He was obviously Jewish. He said so many prayer books. He thought like, whoa, you guys must be praying all day, every day with all those prayer books. It didn't occur to him that they're actually books of wisdom, of study. Why am I saying this? Is because on this day that they opened up the academy and so many more people showed up, the conversation was insane. the degree of exchange of ideas, the marketplace of wisdom was exponentially blown out of proportion. And this is why we call the people of the book. We cherish wisdom like other people cherish cruises, right? This is what we do. We are the people of the book, and it's an amazing experience to see what happened here on this day. Okay, with that introduction. So what happened? They taught the entire tractate of Eidios on that day. By the way, welcome to Shelley, fresh from New York, to Warren, who's still up in Virginia, and to Dan, who's right here local. Okay, and everybody else who's with us live and later. On that day, the reference is to the day on which Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah became the Nasi. Remember, we referenced this day in the Haggadah on Pesach. Remember when you're reading the Haggadah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, I am as if 70 years old. This is because of this story. We learned about it. If you missed the story, then go back in the series, and you should hopefully be able to see it in the previous classes. And there was not a single question in Jewish law that had, until then, been left unresolved in the base medrash, in the house of study, that they did not clarify that day, because of the increased give and take that resulted from the participation of so many students. Remember, we had a whole discussion in the previous class about whether it is appropriate to admit inauthentic students to your academy, or if you should only be teaching to students that are worthy of the wisdom. Gee, can you imagine if they applied that today, to only teach people that are worthy? There'd be like nobody there.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of sad, right? And even Rabbi Gamliel did not withhold himself from coming to the Beis Medrash, even for a single moment. Can you imagine? Rabbi Gamliel, who was just ousted from the leadership of the academy, had the humility now to attend off of his pedestal as an ordinary student of the academy. He did not miss even a beat. Take a look at note 13. Rambam Maimonides writes, pay attention to how Rabbi Gamliel did not refrain from coming to the house of study on the very day that he had been demoted from his position, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the kid, had been appointed in his place, only because he did not want to lose out on studying Torah. Of course, even Rabbi Gamliel, would he have stayed home, he would have studied, but the level of study would not have been the same as in the Beis Medrash, as in the house of study, and he was not willing to forgo even this advantage. That's pretty intense humility there, right? Keith, would you do that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If you were demoted?
No.
I mean, that's pretty intense.
I think I have the humility to be able to do that.
There's nobody more humble than me. Somebody said that. Some famous person once said that. We're not going to go there. Okay.
Note 12 is interesting.
Note 12.
As it relates to this conversation, exactly. Right.
Give me some synopsis of note 12.
It says that because of the students, and there were so many more students that asked more questions, the teachers were required to have more clarity. And because there were so many more questions and so much more clarity, they answered all of the questions.
So this reflects a different piece of Talmud that tells us, much I've learned from my teachers, more I've learned from my colleagues, but more than anyone, I've learned from my students. And I always tell my kids, my teenagers, students over here in the Chabad, I always tell them that the job of a student is to make their teachers miserable. I always say this to my teens. Your job is to make your teachers miserable, not by misbehaving, but by not accepting weak answers, by telling the teacher if you don't understand, and if you need to have it explained again, and if it's not making sense to you. But why does it have to be this way? Challenge the premise, make your teachers miserable, because what's going to happen is everyone is going to benefit if you have the courage to stand when sometimes it seems humiliating. A teacher could try to humiliate the students. I call teachers.
Students don't embarrass the teacher that they do it appropriately.
Well, fair enough. The student shouldn't embarrass the teacher, but I think the balance of power is in favor of the teacher. And I call it student abuse when a kid like my own child was ridiculed in the class for asking questions.
That's wrong.
And I say to my child, you did the right thing. Do not feel badly about it. The teacher just didn't know what the answer was, and therefore they try to compensate for wisdom with authority. Mm-hmm. And that is an abuse of power.
Much better just say, hey, I don't know. I'll look that up for you. But
that's great. You know what? Great question.
Exactly. What would happen? What would happen if a teacher said, you know what? I don't know. Shapsi, well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Right? What kind of lesson is that to a student when a teacher says, I don't know? That's a very good question. You know what you just did to that child? You just lifted them up a million miles,
and now
making them
look it up too. They're gonna say, "Hey,
look, I get caught in that."
Yeah.
You know?
Well, yeah, I did as that professor. I'm like, yeah, you're right.
I'm just thinking, folks, that Rashi, super commentary on Torah. Rashi often writes, I don't know the answer to this question. And he recorded that for posterity.
That's great because that's humility.
And if Rashi can do that, you know what it tells you if Rashi tells you I don't know the answer to the question?
Everyone doesn't know everything.
It tells you that everything else that he writes, that he does know what he's talking about.
Exactly.
But when somebody never tells you I don't know,
you can't trust their
you never
I
know.
know, where was that?
Then you never know.
Yeah.
You never truly know if they know.
Page-
I once had a lawyer at my Shabbos table. I was a young lawyer at my Shabbos table. He used to come here very often. And he used to know the answer to everything. So one time I asked him, I was at the Shabbos table when I tested it out. I was like, what's the connection? Everybody know the connection between Shabbos and Bris? Or Hanukkah and Bris? I was like, just threw something out there. I was like, of course I know the answer. The answer is, and you can see he hadn't thought about it, but he was already into he was like walking into it. You know, I guess maybe it was somehow he was trained this way.
Teach your tongue to say, yeah. Well,
Back on page 24,
Yeah.
it says, teach your tongue to say, I don't know, lest you misspeak and become trapped. And that was discussion about how when Moshe wasn't specific about when midnight was. Because
He was deliberate.
He was deliberate.
Okay, so to explain,
Right.
so Moses tells Pharaoh that the plague of for the death of the firstborn is going to take place approximately at midnight, and not at approximate midnight, not exactly at midnight, because he didn't want that the Egyptian astrologers or astronomers should make a mistake and say, "Oh, you see, it wasn't at midnight." So he's just at approximate because he knew he was setting them up for their mistaken responses, and therefore, a person should accustom himself to do what?
Teach your tongue to say, I do not know, lest you misspeak
I
and
believe.
become trapped.
Right. So lest you misspeak, become trapped. So I don't know. It's a very powerful point for you to incorporate. Very good. Well said. I like that you're scholarly and able to reference other places in Talmud. Warren Alec, make your teacher miserable. Reminds me of our conversations of there is no evil. Are you miserable? First of all, no, I'm not miserable. Miserable is a bad place to be. I'm not miserable. I don't know what the connection between miserable and evil is, though, Warren. So I don't really understand the connection. Miserable could be like a lobster who is miserable in his tightly confined shell, and as a result of that misery, will experience unprecedented growth. It will force him to shed his shell and then grow a new one. So the misery is not a result of evil, it's a result of discomfort, which is the great motivator. Because Warren, no growth ever happens within your comfort zone. And the reason why God makes us miserable, which you are associated with evil, I understand, is in order to spur us to greater growth. Amir Herman, wow, from Long Island. Love to see you here. What a pleasure to see you with us live. Okay, as we learned in the Mishnah, we're continuing on, right? So this guy, Rabbi Gamliel, had the humility, even though he was demoted from the leadership of the academy 2,000 years ago, maybe 1,800 years ago, he still had the humility to show up every day and to study on the regular bench as if nothing happened. As we learned in the Mishnah on that day, Yehuda, an Ammonite convert, came before them in the base medrash. Whoa, he was an Ammonite convert. Do you know what an Ammonite convert is? Does anybody know what an Ammonite convert is?
I thought they weren't allowed to convert.
Yeah, I thought they weren't allowed to convert. Good morning, Fran from Northern Florida. An Ammonite is a Moabite, and an Ammonite. These are the descendants of Lot. Lot is the nephew of Abraham. Lot is the nephew of Abraham. Lot slept with his daughters, 2 daughters. In the infamous episode in the 4th chapter of the Torah, 4th portion of the Torah, and the 2 children born to them were the nations of Ammon and Moab. Residents of the Saudi Arabian, Jordanian, Yemen area peninsula. So it says in the Torah that they're not allowed to ever convert to Judaism. This is going to be interesting. Let's see what happens. So he was an Ammonite convert, came before them in the base medrash. He said to them, what is the law as to whether I may enter the congregation? Ooh, so there it is. He's asking the question. Am I allowed to enter the congregation of Judaism? Because not everyone is allowed to convert to Judaism. The Torah states the converts to Judaism from the nations of Ammon and Moab are forbidden to enter the congregation, which means they're forbidden to marry native-born Jewish women. Yehuda, a convert who had been born in the land of Ammon, inquired whether he was permitted to marry a Jewess. Rabban Gamliel, the previous rabbi of the academy, had said to him, you are forbidden to enter the congregation. Rabbi Yeshua said to him, you are permitted to enter the congregation. Remember, Rabbi Yeshua was the was the opponent of Rabbi Gamliel. The reason why Rabbi Gamliel was demoted is because he was disrespectful to Rabbi Yeshua on multiple occasions for having disagreed with him. That was the reason why he had been originally demoted. So here again, we see that Rabbi Yeshua explicitly, ruled opposite to Rabbi Gamliel, who was the leader of the academy. Rabbi Gamliel said to Rabbi Yeshua, how can you say that? Does it not already say in the Torah, an Ammonite and a Moabite shall not enter the congregation of Hashem? Where does it say that? It says that in Deuteronomy, in the 5th book of the Torah, in chapter 23, verse 4. Rabbi Yeshua said to him, but do the descendants of Ammon and Moab today still live in their original places? We no longer can identify the biblical nations. Why? Why? Sancheriv, the king of Ashur. Anybody heard of Sancheriv, the king of Ashur? This was the most vicious anti-Semite that the world has ever seen. He was the most effective anti-Semite that the world has ever seen. Hitler, he makes Hitler look like, well, hard to say that, but he was far more efficient than Hitler. Yeah. Sancheriv, king of Ashur. We've heard of the Babylonians and the Romans who destroyed our first and second temple. We've heard of the Greeks that didn't destroy our temple, but they defiled it in the Hanukkah story. But have you ever heard of the Assyrians? A-S-S.
Really bad, yeah.
The Assyrians, not to be confused with the Syrians. The Assyrians who ruled in the land of Babylon prior to the Babylonians were the world superpower 2,800 years ago. Under the leadership of their extremely efficient and bloodthirsty ruler by the name of Sancheriv, he conquered pretty much all the nations of the world. And what he did was, in order to mitigate their sense of patriotism and nationalism, he would disperse them. He would move a conquered nation to another land. So you can imagine he conquers Swaziland and he moves the native Zulus of Swaziland to Asia. Then the native Uyghurs or the Tibetans, he moves them to Swaziland. So now nobody feels a connection to the land. Because now those nations all feel like immigrants. So nobody feels like, this is my land and we need nationalism, we need independence. Nobody had the courage to do that anymore because this is what he did, Sancheriv. Why do I say he was an anti-Semite? Because he conquered, remember those 12 tribes of Israel? There were 2 kingdoms of Israel. There was the kingdom of Judah ruling over the 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and there was the kingdom of Israel ruling over the 10 tribes. Now the kingdom of Israel was vanquished, was conquered by Sancheriv. They were exiled to the point that we have not heard of them in 2,800 years. They were exiled so far away that we have not heard of the 10 exiled nations, the 10 lost tribes. It's been 2,800 years, and that's like 80% of the Jewish people. The other 2 tribes are 20% or less of the Jewish people are the remaining nations of Israel, which is who we are. So Rabbi Yeshua responds to him and he says, yeah, it says in the Torah that the Ammonite and the Moabite cannot convert to Judaism. But today we don't know who they are because Sancheriv, the king of Ashur already long ago came up against the region and he mixed up all the nations. Sancheriv's practice when he conquered a nation was to exile its citizens and to resettle them in other lands. And it says that Sancheriv boasted in Isaiah, I have removed the boundaries of people and planted their treasures. I have brought down dwellers in strongholds. And thus, said Rabbi Yeshua, since the nations of the world have become intermingled with each other, even if someone comes from the land of Ammon, we do not assume that he's a descendant of the original biblical nation of Ammon because we apply the rule that whatever separates is assumed to have separated from the majority. In other words, there's a basic rule here that if you find an item and you don't know where it's from, right? You find, let's say, a piece of meat, right? Find a piece of meat. Can you assume that piece of meat is kosher or not kosher? It's not marked.
Not kosher.
Why would you assume it's not kosher?
Because you don't know it's been proven to be kosher.
Well, it's not that it's innocent and guilty and proven innocent. It's a matter of majority rules. More pieces of meat in the world are non-kosher than those that are kosher. Okay, that's why. You follow the majority rule. So therefore, since all the nations of the world have been dispersed, right, to the point that we don't know who anybody is, when somebody comes from a land and we're wondering who he is he an Ammonite? What is he? We assume that he's part of the majority. Now, the majority of nations are not Ammonites and not Moabites, which means the majority of nations are allowed to convert to Judaism. It's only a very small minority of nations that are not allowed to convert to Judaism. And therefore, based upon that Talmudic principle, when identity of something is unknown, we attribute it to the majority. Since the majority of the people of the world are not Ammonites, we may assume that this man Yehuda as well is not an Ammonite. And therefore, said Rabbi Yeshua to Rabbi Gamliel, the leader of the academy, yes, he may convert and he may marry a Jewess. Rabban Gamliel said to him, yes, but does not it already say in Jeremiah, but afterward I will return the captivity of the children of Ammon, which means that God promises that he will return the captives of Ammon to their land after Sancheiriv exiles them. So the Ammonites have already returned to their country. Ooh, this is an interesting debate. Rabbi Yeshua said to him, but doesn't not it already say also, and I will return the captivity of my people Israel? That their God, same God has promised that he will return the Jewish people also back to the land of Israel, and nevertheless they have not yet returned. We're still in Babylon. God also promised that he will return the Jews to the land, yet we see that that has not yet happened. Obviously, that prophecy will only be fulfilled only in the future with the coming of the Mashiach. So if so, it's true with regard to the Jewish people. The prophecy regarding Ammon also will be fulfilled also only with the coming of Mashiach in the future. In the meanwhile, we may assume that Yehuda descends from the majority of nations who are not Ammonites. The Mishnah concludes immediately. The academy, the Masif decided with Rabbi Yeshua and permitted Yehuda to enter the congregation. Rabbi Yeshua had bested Rabban Gamliel in this public debates. The Gemara cites this Mishnah in note 15 in Yadayim, which records an exchange between Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua that occurred in that day to prove that even Rabban Gamliel did not withhold himself that day from the base medrash even for a single moment. Okay, so basically what happened here was, this is an example of how he continued back to the yeshiva, and now he was no longer the head of the academy. He was the former head of the academy. Still, he was engaged in great debate. Let's see what happens here, because the story continues. Rabbi Gamliel said, since this is the case, that was a fascinating debate, by the way. Yeah. Do you know where else this is a fascinating debate? With regard to Ruth, the Moabite princess. Ruth was a Moabite princess. If you remember the story, it's the story of Shavuos. Ruth was married to the sons of Elimelech and Naomi, two sisters, Ruth and Orpah, were married to Machlon and Kilion. I don't know which one was married to which, but they all died, the husbands. And Ruth now wanted to convert to Judaism. She actually did. She converted to Judaism. She married Boaz, and Boaz died on the night of his wedding. So people assumed that the reason why he died on the night of his wedding is because he married a Moabite. And even though the rabbis had ruled that it was okay under the circumstances, which I'm not going to get into right now, they figured that maybe they made a mistake, and that's why he died. And that's why Ruth and Boaz's great-grandson grew up with a severe stain on his legitimacy.
That was David, right?
His name was David. And if you'd like, if you look it up on YouTube, there's a class I gave on exactly this topic called, I think it's called The Deed and the Creed. No, The Convert and the Creed. That's what it's called. It's on YouTube. You can go to YouTube, and it's called The Convert and the Creed. Let me see if it comes up. Let's see if it comes up. Yep, it does. That's it. That's the title. I'm going to post a link up here in the YouTube comments in case anybody wants to watch this video, which is pretty awesome. Expansion of this topic, of this idea that a beautiful expansion on this idea of how Moabites are indeed allowed to, Moabite women at least, are allowed to convert to Judaism. Let's just see what happens. Rabbi Gamliel said, since this is the case, that the Masifta has decided in favor of Rabbi Yeshua, it is a sign from heaven that I was wrong in painting him. Rabbi Gamliel has the humility to declare. He now has the humility to declare that since Rabbi Yeshua had bested him in the argument, and since the majority of the academy now had ruled in favor of Rabbi Yeshua against Rabbi Gamliel, it was a sign that he was wrong in having pained Rabbi Yeshua and in having humiliated him in the previous episodes, which is the reason why he was demoted from his leadership of the academy. I will therefore go and appease Rabbi Yeshua. 287. When he arrived at the house of Rabbi Yeshua, so that the walls of his house were black. Can you imagine? He goes to his nemesis, his academic nemesis. He said to him, from the walls of your house, it is apparent that you are a charcoal maker or a smith. Rabbi Yeshua said to him, you first discovered this now? Now you figured out what I do for a living? You've been arguing with me all these years, and you did not even know what my profession is? Woe to the generation whose leader that you are unaware of the suffering of the Torah scholars, how they struggle to support themselves and how they struggle to be nourished. Ooh, that was pretty intense.
That's true. All the higher ups always forget where they came from, and that the
Whoa, Shapsi, that's a very broad, sweeping statement. You just sort of knocked all leaders of all time with one fell swoop. I mean, I would tend to say that's an exaggeration.
Okay, a little bit. But
A lot, yeah.
the majority of people do forget where they come from, and they do forget what it is that, you're making millions of dollars. I'm speaking business-wise. And you forget that the people who are actually making
Have you forgotten where you come from?
Pardon me?
Have you forgotten where you come from?
A little bit.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm remembering
So
now, but
change it. All right, let's keep on going. Let's not smash anybody else. Rabbi Gamliel said to him, I've spoken to you beyond what is proper. So now he's opening up with this introduction. Rabbi Gamliel is coming in with his apology, like after having been knocked off his high horse again. Rabbi Gamliel said to him, listen, I'm sorry the way I spoke to you. I humble myself before you. Forgive me. Rabbi Shua ignored it. Do it, pleaded Rabbi Gamliel, for the sake of my father's house. Rabbi Shua was appeased, and he forgave him. Who was his father's house? No, 20. That is, forgive me for the sake of my ancestor Hillel the elder. Hillel was Rabbi Gamliel's great-grandfather and the descendant of King David. Others explain it as to be Rabbi Gamliel's father, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, who was actually one of the 10 martyrs murdered by the Roman government. Okay. Now that Rabbi Shua had forgiven Rabbi Gamliel, the sages sought to restore him to his proper position, former position. Oh, okay. So if he has been forgiven, maybe it's time to put him back in the leadership. They said, who will go inform the rabbis in the house of study that Rabbi Gamliel should be reinstated as the president of the academy? A certain laundryman said to them, I will go. Why do we need to know that he was a laundryman? I don't know. Maybe the laundrymen were welcomed into the academy now. And maybe this is the whole chance, the whole change.
Yeah.
Until now, no laundrymen were allowed in the academy, potentially, right? I will go. Rabbi Shua sent the following message with him to those in the base of Medrash. Let him who wore the robe of presidency until now, the Nasius, continue to wear the robe. This is a message Rabbi Yeshua now sent to the people going into the academy. That is, Rabbi Gamliel, it's a code, who until now was president should continue to be Nasi. This is Rabbi Yeshua basically was telling people, I've forgiven him. Shall he who until now did not wear the robe, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, tell the one who did wear the robe, remove your robe and I will put it on? So the thing is, the one who wore the robe until now should continue to wear the robe. The one who wore the robe until now should continue to wear the robe. That's Rabbi Gamliel.
Right.
And shall he who did not wear the robe tell the one who did wear the robe to remove your robe and give it to me? In other words, he's basically saying, listen, it's not appropriate for the youngster to take the place of the incumbent. So let's just keep the status quo. That's basically what Rabbi Yeshua is sending a message. Okay. The laundryman's mission fails. Rabbi Akiva said to the rabbis, lock the doors of the academy so that the servants of Rabbi Gamliel do not come and harass the rabbis. I guess this was the message that the laundryman had sent. The laundryman said the message about Rabbi Yeshua and the robe. The laundryman was the one who had sent that message, right? So it turns out that Rabbi Akiva, when he heard the message, he didn't believe that the laundryman had been sent by Rabbi Yeshua. Rather, he thought it was a coup. So Rabbi Akiva kind of says, oh, okay, we're under fire. There's a coup d'etat about to take place. So lock the doors of the academy so that the servants of Rabbi Gamliel do not come and harass the rabbis. Rabbi Yeshua said, better that I get up and go to them myself, so that they will believe that I've forgiven Rabbi Gamliel. In other words, when the message came from the laundryman that Rabbi Yeshua had buried the hatchet, nobody believed it. But now if Rabbi Yeshua himself comes up and he says, I forgive Rabbi Gamliel, people would believe him. He came, he knocked on the door, and he said to them, let he who is a sprinkler, the son of a sprinkler, sprinkle. Shall he who is neither a sprinkler nor the son of a sprinkler say to the sprinkler, son of a sprinkler, your water is ordinary cave water and your ashes are ordinary ashes? You got that, Keith? Okay, let's do that one more time. So Rabbi Yeshua got up and he says, he came, he knocked on the door and he said to them, let he who is a sprinkler, the son of a sprinkler, sprinkle. So if you're the sprinkler, the son of a sprinkler, then you go ahead and sprinkle.
Right.
But he was neither a sprinkler nor the son of a sprinkler. You're a newbie. Shall he say to the sprinkler, the son of a sprinkler, your water is illegitimate? Your water is cave water and your ashes are ordinary ashes. A person who becomes impure from a human corpse can become pure again only if sprinkled with a mixture composed of spring water and ashes of the burnt holy cow. Right, you know the holy cow was the red heifer. So you've got to use special spring water and you got to use special ashes of the burnt red heifer. The use of any other water or ashes to create the mixture renders the mixture useless in order to purify the person who became impure by touching a dead person. You know, when a Jew touches a dead person, he becomes impure. By the way, quick tangent over here, there's a gate in the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. It's called Shar HaRachamim, the Gate of Mercy. It's been known, a tradition forever, that the Mashiach, when the Mashiach will arrive, the Messiah, he'll come out of those gates. From the Temple Mount, he'll come out of the gates of mercy and he'll come out to the world. The Arabs were very uncomfortable about this. So 500 years ago, they bricked it up. Till today, it's been bricked up for 500 years. But then they realized that he might have a hammer. The Mashiach might come with a hammer. And he might be able to knock down the brick wall. So they decided they learned they're going to get smart. They realized that a Jew becomes impure when he comes in contact with a dead person. When a Jew walks into a cemetery, he becomes impure. Now, today, this doesn't matter because the only ramification of becoming impure is that you can't walk into the Holy Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And you can't eat certain sacrificial foods which come out of the temple in Jerusalem. Now, since we don't have a temple in Jerusalem, neither of those consequences apply today. But when Mashiach will come, we will need to have the ashes of the red heifer mixed with the waters of a spring in order to purify anybody who came in contact with the dead, which basically is everybody. Now, that being said, the Arabs, they realized that if we got to block the Messiah, so what are they going to do? They made a cemetery on the side of the road between the Temple Mount and the highway that goes around the Temple Mount in the Siloam Valley. They made a cemetery right there, right outside the gate. So that if the Messiah comes out of the gate with a hammer, he'll go straight into the cemetery and he'll become impure and he won't be able to be the Messiah anymore. Now, when you drive by that gate, which is very close to the paratroopers' gate, the Gate of Lions, it's called, where the paratroopers conquered the old city of Jerusalem in the 6-day war, and God willing, it should happen again. We should conquer Tehran, Damascus, Beirut, and put an end to all these horrible enemies. Wouldn't it be nice to expand biblical Israel to the biblical borders of Israel, which, by the way, goes all the way to the Tigris and Euphrates? Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Can you imagine? Maybe that's what they should be talking about in the summit tomorrow. Yeah. You know, this Qatar summit. They should be talking about. Anyway, let me just finish this point. So they planted the cemetery. Problem is, Keith, is that they didn't realize, the Arabs, that which kind of dead body makes a person impure? Only a Jewish dead body. But a non-Jewish dead body doesn't make you impure. Only a dead Jew can give you impurity. But a dead Gentile is not impure. So making an Arab cemetery of them made no difference. Right? Back to the Talmud here. We're talking about the sprinkler. Let me just finish this point.
Number 23 goes into the parable.
Just before, we're going to finish the sentence. Rabbi Yeshua thus said, is it proper for someone who is neither a Kohen, a priest, nor the son of a Kohen, and therefore not expert in the matters of purification, to tell the Kohen, who is an expert, that his water and ashes are invalid? So basically, Rabbi Yeshua is saying this: if you're not a Kohen, you can't tell a real Kohen how to be a Kohen. What he was saying was, as Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was just a fill-in for Rabbi Gamliel, who's the true leader of the academy. And now that I forgive him, he should be reinstated. That's basically what he's saying. Rabbi Akiva said to him, let's just finish this exchange before we go deeper. Rabbi Akiva said to him, Rabbi Yeshua, you have been appeased. Whoa. You've forgiven Rabbi Gamliel. Did we do this for any reason? Others, obviously, Rabbi Akiva understood what he was saying. Did we do this for any reason other than your honor? Tomorrow morning, we only did this for your honor. So I guess if you're cool with it, then let's go. Tomorrow morning, you and I shall rise early and go to Rabbi Gamliel's door to inform him that he is being reinstated as the Nasi, as the president of the academy. All this drama, it's like a soap opera here. What were you going to say, Keith?
No, number 23.
23, okay. In the first parable, the robe wearer represented Rabbi Gamliel. That parable's message was that the position of Nasi, of the president, by right should be returned to Rabbi Gamliel, who descends from the royal line of presidents. I mean, remember, he comes from Hillel, the elder, who comes from King David. This is the leadership of the land of Israel. David comes from Judah, who was blessed by Jacob to be the leader, the king of Israel. So this guy is from the cloth. He's the robe bearer. He's literally cut from the cloth, right? In the second parable, by contrast, the sprinkler, son of a sprinkler, represented Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Shua was attempting to put Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's mind at ease with his reverse parable in the following manner. Just as the priesthood, the kahuna, was given to someone like you, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, who is a descendant of Ezra the Kohen, and it is forbidden for anyone else to assume the role of Kohen, so too you are not descended from the line of the Nasim, should leave the job of being Nasi to Rabbi Gamliel. Okay, this is beautiful. Very, very nice commentary here from Maharsha. Maharsha is one of the classic commentaries on Talmud. He says this. He says, look, in the first, there's two parables. The robe bearer should be given his robe back, and the sprinkler should not be told how to be a sprinkler, right? So what does it mean a sprinkler? A sprinkler is a guy that doesn't mean a water sprinkler. It means like a guy that sprinkles other people. When it comes to the person pure who becomes impure with impurity of a dead person, by the way, till today, a Kohen is not supposed to walk into a cemetery or into a hospital where there's a morgue. You know, we were looking to hire a young rabbi here several years ago, and we found a candidate that was pretty good. At one point, he told me, by the way, I'm a Kohen. I said, 1 second, you're a Kohen? You're a Kohen? Which means, 1 second, you don't do funerals? And you don't do hospital visitation? So what exactly do you do? What kind of rabbi are you? Right? I don't know if there's some sort of discrimination clause against Kohens, but I said, look, I'm looking for someone that's able to do that kind of stuff, right? But imagine being a Kohen rabbi, you're not allowed to go to cemeteries. You're not allowed to go to hospitals. It's a problem, but it's only because, not because God forbid to discriminate. It's because of their elevated status. They're so much holier. You know, by the way, I want to tell you something. Jews do not believe in egalitarianism. I don't believe that Judaism believes in egalitarianism. Well, let me qualify that. Everybody's equal, but we're different. We're all equally important, yes, but we're different. Men and women are different. Men have strengths, women have strengths, right? Jews have strengths, Gentiles have strengths. There's 10 different kinds of Jews that I can think of right now. There's the Kohen, the Levite, the Israelite. There's different categories called the Nassim and the Mamzer and the whatever. There's different categories, right? There's different categories. Right? So in other words, it's like saying this. It's like lawyer. Who's better, lawyers, doctors, or entrepreneurs? Who's better, rabbi? And the answer is they're all the same important. Just that if you want a surgery, you should probably go to a doctor, not an entrepreneur. Right? If you want a car repair, you should go to a mechanic, not a lawyer. Right? But if you're going to come in and say, well, everybody's the same, then maybe you're going to have your heart surgery with a mechanic. I don't know. See how that goes. I don't know. Maybe you'll do a good job. I don't know. But everybody's got their own strengths, right? So what happens here is that Rabbi Yeshua is trying to make him feel better. When he tells Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, we're taking away the leadership from you, he says, we're not just taking something away from you. We're not just giving the leadership to the tribe of Judah, to Rabbi Gamliel, who's the scion of David and Judah, the kings of Israel. But also, remember, you're a Kohen. You're a descendant of Ezra the Kohen. Ezra, you know, the one that came out of Persia with Esther and Mordechai to rebuild the second temple. You're a Kohen, okay? So you have your own stay in your lane kind of thing, right? You're a Kohen. As a Kohen, nobody can tell you how to be a Kohen. Nobody can just become a Kohen. You can't opt in or opt out to become a Kohen. You're born a Kohen. You stay a Kohen. Finish. You are a Kohen. There's nothing you can do about it. So just like you're a Kohen, you're from the tribe of Levi, obviously. He's from the tribe of Judah, and let him do the work of the tribe of Judah. But you can't just jump ship over here. You know, when the Maccabees conquered the Greeks, they made themselves kings. The Maccabees were actually not from the tribe of Judah. What tribe were they from? Hang on. Maccabees, Matisyahu. I can't remember what tribe he was from, but he wasn't from the tribe of Judah. I think they were Levites. I think they're from the tribe of Levi. So these guys, the Hasmonean dynasty, they made themselves kings, but they weren't legitimate kings because they were from the tribe of Levi. They weren't from the tribe of Yehuda. Right? Interesting. And this is what happens in our story here. Ooh, well over time here. I'm so sorry. Okay, so this is all a lot of exciting stuff going on here. We missed the big notes here. Let's do a quick little dive into 286. Let's finish with this. on 286, bottom of the page. A matter of principle. What an amazing academy this was. On the very day that Rabbi Gamliel was removed from the leadership and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was installed in his place, the members of the Masifta continued studying Torah with their usual diligence. They did not debate the day's events. They weren't talking politics, nor did the upheaval disturb their serenity. On the contrary, they analyzed on that day the most difficult halachic issues and rolled in them with total peace of mind, as if nothing unusual had happened. For indeed, whatever they did in regard to the presidency was done with due consideration, without any personal involvement whatsoever. Think about this for a moment. What would CNN be talking about on the day of this transfer of power? All day long, the talking heads will be talking about the transfer of power. Yet, this academy, they go straight into the issues. They dive deep into the issues, and that's what they're talking about. Yeah, that's what I just said. Perfect. How often we encounter the opposite. Any small complaint, any public issue or minor dispute immediately disrupts the studying, not to mention a great upheaval, such as occurred in the story. But the disturbance in learning caused by such events is the result of emotions. When things are done based on principles with wisdom and the sake of heaven, the changes will not cause a disruption in Torah study. You know, it's an interesting concept, folks, if you want to think about it. How much of your day is focused on politics? If you had to give a number to how many words you speak in one day, right? Let's say, I don't know, let's say you speak, 10,000 words? Is there a number? At least 10,000, right? If you're an introvert. Let's say an average person speaks, let's say 20,000 words. How many of those words, you know, in today, AI and, you know, with facial recognition technology, nothing goes unnoticed, right? Imagine you had to get a scorecard at the end of every day on wisdom. Think about that. Imagine you get a wisdom scorecard at the end of the day of how many, I'm not talking about your thoughts yet. That's a different conversation. I'm talking about your words, right? Your words. How many words were wise and how many words were just about, you know, politics, which is something that you really have no control over anyways, right? You know, small people talk about other people. Simple people talk about other people. Average people talk about current affairs. And smart people talk about ideas, right? So how much of your day have been talking about ideas, Torah? And how much of your day have been talking about, well, Trump did this, or Trump did that, and Kamala said that, and Biden is thinking about doing this? How much of your day is talking about that? Is it 80% or is it 90%? Think about that, right? This academy here, what a beautiful example of leadership, of living, of integrity, of authenticity, of presence, of consciousness. To be able to say, oh, okay, new leader, no problem. Let's keep on going, right? But even more astonishing is Rabbi Gamliel. He found the strength to accept everything calmly to the point that he did not miss a moment's attendance in the Beis Medrash, continuing to debate in halacha with his contemporaries as if nothing unusual had occurred. The fact that he had been stripped of his presidency, the fact that another man now headed the Masifta, the fact that now students whose interior was not like their exterior were studying in the yeshiva in opposition to the entire system that he had put in place. His entire policy was just taken down. While he had been president, none of this deterred him. Another person in this situation would have become broken and fled in humiliation. But Rabbi Gamliel's mind ruled over his emotions almost as if he had no emotions. This same Rabbi Gamliel, who when he had been in charge, demanded absolute obedience to the presidency, to the president, to the point that he had commanded the great Rabbi Yeshua to stand on his feet and then left him standing in humiliation while he delivered the lecture. Now, when he was demoted from his position, continued studying Torah as if nothing had happened. This demonstrates that everything he had done before while he was in charge stemmed only from his considered Torah opinion that the president needs to be conducted in this unyielding manner. Consequently, when the members of the Masifta who held otherwise removed him from office and he was no longer in charge, he was able to continue studying with his usual concentration. So in other words, it's clear that he wasn't doing this for narcissistic purposes. He was doing it because he believed that he needed to protect the office. A person who does everything with forethought is capable of utilizing his various capabilities, each in its proper time and place. His emotions do not hold sway over him because his mind controls his emotions. And I want to just comment on Rabbi Gamliel one more time. There's so many things you can learn about Rabbi Gamliel over here. What was it that motivated him to go to apologize? It was when he had that first debate with Rabbi Yeshua about the Ammonite convert. And he noticed that the academy sided against him. Until then, there wasn't a majority rule because it was the president ruling. There was no room for the majority because the judge had ruled. There wasn't a need for a jury. But now that the judge wasn't involved, the president wasn't involved in this particular debate, and the majority of the opinion was coming from the people, he realized that he was outvoted. When he realized that he was outvoted, then he was like, oh my God, maybe everything else I did was wrong too. And that's what motivates him to say sorry. Isn't that an amazing, amazing piece? I want to say to you two more things. I don't want to forget them. Hold on. What are they? Rabbi Yeshua. There's one thing I want to tell you. Humiliated Rabbi Yeshua. The other thing I just forgot. I'm sorry. So the other thing I want to just tell you, this Rabbi Yeshua, by the way, is an amazing character. He's an amazing character. There's another piece of Talmud, which actually I would love to study with you guys. I would like to make, Keith, will do me a favor, Keith and Mike, please remind me that I want to study with you the debates of Rabbi Yeshua with the Athenian sages. There were 60 Athenian sages, the wise men of Athens. You're talking Socrates, Dante. You're talking about, well, he was a painter, but Socrates, Aristotle, Plato, right? These were the wisest men of Rome, of Greece, and they would debate Rabbi Yeshua 60-1. 60 sages of Athens against one, and they would speak in code. Their debates are unbelievable. Let's take it on as a project. Let's do those debates.
Where's that?
It's elsewhere in the Talmud. We'll find it. Right? I can't remember right now, but I think it would be unbelievable to do those. You'll love them. So we might actually take a break after this for a little while in order to jump into that entire sugya, which is a segment of Torah. So Rabbi Yeshua, by the way, is an amazing personality. We'll talk about him later. All right, folks, gonna stop it over here. Have a lovely day. Be well.
So Rabbi Yeshua